So, welcome to today's little video. I'm Glocktane, and this is my little helper, Pico. We love him to death. That is my special boy. So today's video is going to be talking about Sorcerer. I'm going to do what I did with my Wizard guide. We're going to make an updating Sorcerer guide. One of the reasons you guys are probably struggling to actually find people who make content like this is because every patch they just randomly change something. And as a content creator, it is impossible to make a YouTube video like 24/7, you can always find it kind of thing, content that will actually encompass all of the stuff accurately, because within a week, it could change drastically. So we're gonna go over the massive amount of stuff that you need to know to play Sorcerer, the stats, the equipable weapons, how that affects everything, combos. All right, so first and foremost, let's go ahead and let's just talk about all the base stats that you have with Sorc. This is without gear, obviously. 10 strength, 10 vig, 10 agility, 18 dex, 25 will, 20 knowledge, 12 resourcefulness. Strength, obviously melee, a little bit of HP. Vig, obviously your HP with a little bit of strength. Agility is just kind of your movement speed and your regular interaction speed. Dex is your action speed. And from my earlier videos, if any of you guys have watched, you know that it is the spell release. So when you let go of the spell and actually cast it, as opposed to the purple bar. Will is basically increase your buff duration, your debuff duration, your magic resist, and your magic damage bonus. Knowledge, increase the memory capacity and spell casting speed, and spell recovery bonus. So you will not get anything for spell recovery bonus. Don't worry about that. That's a wizard thing. For increased memory capacity and spell casting speed, if you don't go instacast, that'll be important. So resourcefulness is your cooldown. Your spells, see how it says 3 seconds here? You will not have the ability to just see the different cooldowns, right? So if I put on this spell and I put on just a bunch of resourcefulness right here, it's still gonna say 3 seconds, okay? So keep that in mind when you are building your character for the first time Sorc. You're gonna have to actually go in and use your spells to see the cooldowns, okay? You start with like 100 HP, which is insane. I always wear the Skelly Champ skin because I think it's drippy as hell. Come at me. Memory capacity, you start with just 14. That's how much you can put in for these. So every tier is, you know, 1 cost. So tier 1, 1 cost, tier 2, 2 cost, yada, yada, yada. Goes all the way to Golem at the very bottom, which is 7 cost. Let's see here. So you start at 295 move speed. It's going to be one of the slower of the classes. And the reason why is because if your character is designed around using nothing that slows you down, like you're running with your hands out, you're not using a weapon or anything like that. If that's the design, it has to start a little slower. So that way the movement creep isn't insane and you can never be caught. Action speed's only 1%. It's kind of whatever. You get it naturally through what you build. Manual dex doesn't matter. Spellcasting speed, that's going to be for if you don't use time distortion. Equip speed, putting on stuff. Regular interaction speed, that'll go up with resourcefulness and agility. You'll just see that naturally go up. Cooldown reduction bonus, also known as CDR. This is going to be a huge thing for the builds that I put out, okay? Debuff duration, it's not really gonna matter to you because your cooldowns aren't debuffs, right? So a cleric, for example, when they use faithfulness, they'll see a little red timer, right? That would be what that's for, right? Or if you get hit by Curse of Pain or Power of Sacrifice. Armor pen, magic pen, blah, 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 blah. Physical damage reduction. Obviously, I just have a little less because I'm the Skelly Champ skin. Magic resist, this will go up. These two will just go up naturally when you put on armor, right? Physical power bonus. This one in my builds usually suffers the most, but we use Crystal Sword and we get up to 0% with Long Sword, so we're just fine. Magic power bonus. This will scale naturally with the will that you build and the magic power that you build. We will have a separate video dedicated to understanding how magic power bonus and physical power bonus work, because if I try to put it all into this video, you won't finish it. Most of you probably already clicked out by this point. For those of you that do want to learn, this is the important stuff for Dark and Darker. So that's just kind of a little breakdown of what you're going to start with. So let's go into the perks. Let me zoom in here. So Apex of Sorcery, while casting spells, reduce movement speed by 99%. Just means you stand still. This can be negated by B-hopping. If you bind your mouse to scroll wheel, right, then you just hold right click and left click and you just scroll wheel. So this will be the optimal way to hold the mouse, so that way you can still scroll and merge. You gain 50% magical damage bonus and 50% spellcasting speed. It used to be super duper required back when the character first came out, and that was because Lightning Storm was insanely overpowered. They toned it down recently. I personally do not think this is the right way to play it. Manifold, reduce cooldown of all spells by 25%, but reduce spell casting speed by 15%. So again, if you weren't using Instacast, this will affect you. I do not run it because right now it does not work with time distortion, okay? So we're going to go ahead and focus on time distortion since this is kind of what it all sparks from. All of your spell casting times are reduced to 0, but cooldown times are increased by 4 times. So that 3-second cooldown for Wind Blast is now going to be, 12 seconds. But with our builds, you'll see that it all kind of plays out together, okay? So time distortion is the big one. I'm gonna go ahead and throw that on. And you can see this one goes up to 12 seconds, right? Because it goes from 3 to 12. So that is gonna be the big thing that we build our kit with. So spell merge, while using your bare hands, casting 2 combinable spells simultaneously allows you to use a new spell. That is how, if you wanted to use Wind Blast and Fire Arrow, now you can see on the left side that you have a merge spell. When you are casting both of these, you hit R, that's your special interact, to then create Flamethrower, right? That's just an example. The most common one is going to be Water Orb and Fire Arrow making Elemental Bolt. Because it's very strong, and it's a low cooldown, and it's a single projectile, it's very simple to use. People are used to it like Dark Bolt, okay? So, back to perk and skills. Spell Sculpting. This is huge. This is huge. Increases the range of all spells by 25% and the area of effect by 25%, but increases the cooldown by 25%. This increases the cooldown of your spell by the base number, okay? So instead of 3 seconds, right? When we put it on, we go here, we see 3 seconds. When we put it on, it does not show, right? It doesn't show. You're going to have to go in and try them, because that 3 seconds doesn't change, but the Fire Orb, Lightning Bolt, Vortex, those all do. So if I put on Time Distortion, you'll see it goes up to 36. And if I put on Spell Sculpting, you'll see that it goes to 38. But it doesn't always show because the game only shows the first, decimal slot, the whole integer. Okay? And that's going to be important when we get into extra CDR as well. I use this because the extra range on Lightning Bolt is insanely important to tether. Using Flame Strike to position it deeper into the enemy backlines. Using Water Bolt because it will go farther, right? Meaning you can set up better landmine areas. Fire Arrow doesn't really affect it that much because it has a super long distance. Eruption, same thing as Flame Strike, and then you can also place Flame Wall in their backline they can't see. Fire Orb goes farther. The biggest thing is going to be the Earth Elemental, the Golem. So when you summon the Golem, this meta where we have people dancing on blues in crypts or dancing on reds on ruins to completely block people from even leaving the game. This is imperative in solos, duos, and trios. I do not go into the dungeon without Golem. So if I'm chasing somebody and I think they're about to just take a doorway to get out of the fight, I throw down the Golem and they cannot leave the game. Let's go ahead. Spell Stride is gain 5% move speed bonus while casting spells. This is going to be important for Lightning Bolt, right? So Manifold, reduce cooldown of all spells by 25%, but reduce spell casting speed by 15%. Now, a lot of people have been saying that they prefer to run this instead of Spell Stride. I personally still run Spell Stride. I don't personally think it's worth it. I prefer to run Spell Stride, Time Distortion, Spell Merge, and Spell Sculpting. Apex Sorcery if I'm doing something cheeky. Manifold, just kind of like what I'm testing, right? Let's get to spells. All right, so in the recent patch, what we had was the ability to actually remove combat. So what that means is you can now remove your Suppress Sorcery. So you can actually do 10 spell. I'm going to tell you my first favorite 8 spell, and then I'm going to tell you what I do with 10 spell, okay? I'm going to show you just an example of every spell here. Wind Blast is very simple. Deal 10 air magical damage to the target and push them back. Very simple, scales 1 to 1. Water Bolt, launch a condensed water orb dealing 20 magical damage to targets it touches and inflicting wet for 2 seconds. Basically, target lose 20% move speed bonus and jump height reduced by 30%. Stone Skin. Surround yourself with stone for 10 seconds, gaining 10% physical damage reduction, 5% physical damage bonus, but losing 10 additional move speed. If you're a bruiser, it's great. Fire arrow. Fire 3 homing arrows in a radial pattern, each dealing 10 fire magical damage and inflicting burn for 3 seconds. This is going to be your bread and butter, okay? You are going to throw this out at the beginning of an engagement. You're going to use a couple of the bigger spells like Flame Strike and Eruption, and then you're going to go back to Fire Arrow. It is a shotgun, and it is also a long-range homing, tracking, just bruiser. It's amazing. It's my favorite spell. To get it to track, you have to have your crosshair on the target when the arrows release, just like Magic Missile. 2. Ice Spear. Fire an Ice Spear that deals 30 ice magical damage, piercing and damaging all targets in its path. Very simple. It has a delay because it's so strong. I use this with the book out because if you can predict where the enemy's going, you can use it and just make some great plays. This does not slow the enemy down. People think it does because of Ice Bolt from Wizard, but it really is just raw damage. Glaciate. Envelop your weapon in ice for 15 seconds, inflicting frostbite for 1 second upon hit. This is a weapon buff. It's just basically like, hey, you have Viola in your hand right now. This would be a lot better if you had better melee options. Falchion's pretty bad in this state of the meta. Longsword is more or less going to be relying on parry. Staff, it's okay, but I personally think that the only time this really works is when you're doing the teleport nuke play. We'll talk about that with staff out. Flame Strike. Creating a fire pillar lasting 3 seconds, deals 35 fire magical damage on creation, 10 fire magical damage per second to enemies inside while inflicting burn for 3 seconds. This is insane. This is so good. The target takes 3 magical damage every second. So if you can get them stuck in the flame pillar, they're getting that 10 fire magical damage and that 3 magical damage from the burn at the same time. So it's like a big burst, and then it also has really good burn tick. Eruption. Cause a ground explosion, dealing 20 earth magical damage and lifting all targets within the area into the air. Very good for movement around the map. If you are in trouble, you can erupt underneath yourself, use it in combo with levitation, and it is a very wonderful movement ability. I use it in combo with Lightning Bolt. I will hold in my right hand Lightning Bolt, and in my left hand I will use Eruption. You use this because, again, if you have the ability to use both hands, use it. It's insane. We'll talk about that later. Vortex. Create a vortex centered on the caster. Targets touching the vortex take 15 air magical damage and are pushed back. This has a delay to it. So you activate it, it goes 1 Mississippi, and then it blows back. Okay? Lightning Bolt. This is the tether. It got nerfed heavily. You will probably have this in every build because it's part of the teleport component. Lightning Bolt and Vortex are the combination. We'll talk about combos in a second here. Lightning Bolt is a tether, and if you have spell sculpting, it goes 25% farther. Just like the electric spells from Wizard, the target loses 20% move speed bonus. Does pretty solid damage. It's also great to throw out in one hand and then use that movement slow to hit the bigger spells like Flame Strike and Eruption. Fire Orb. This is a giga nuke. If it hits something, it explodes and it does crazy damage to the floor. If I give you potions, can I damage check too?
Fuck yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh! Oh my god, Tick, no! No! Oh my god! What? Launch a fire orb forward, dealing 5 fire magical damage per second to nearby targets. So if they stay with it, it hurts them. The orb lasts for 6 seconds and deals 30 fire magical damage to targets it touches. Upon contact, it explodes, dealing another 15 fire magical damage. Just like Fireball, the projectile has a hitbox and the explosion has a hitbox, and it burns for 5 magic damage every second. Lightning Sphere is the next one. Surround yourself with an electromagnetic field for 6 seconds, shocking all nearby targets for 5 lightning magical damage per second. This was much stronger when it first released. I do not use this. A lot of people are like, oh, but I use it with Apex Sorcery. You have to be continuously casting spells to get that effect. And I'll show you a physical example here in the video. When you're lightning balling onto somebody, they are losing the movement speed. So if you combine it with Glaciate, you can just stay on somebody basically indefinitely, and it forces an engagement. It's very good to basically scare off melee users, but once people understand how weak it is, it kind of fails in that aspect. Levitation, instantly lift the target into the air and gently lower them back down. You can use it on yourself, you can use it on allies, enemies. The only thing it doesn't work on for players is a Barbarian with Iron Will. It can be blocked by shields. It's a targeted spell, so just like Wizard's Invis, you have to aim away from something that could be levitated. Summon Earth Elemental. Summon an Earth Elemental for 24 seconds. The Earth Elemental increases the caster's armor rating by 30 and deals 40 physical damage to nearby enemies. When you're getting run on, if you use Stone Skin and summon an Earth Elemental, you get so much extra armor, it's insane. So if you're fighting against a ranger, if you throw the golem up into their face and use Stone Skin, you have a much better chance of reducing all of the damage that their arrows are going to be doing, and you can actually close the gap. It's fantastic. I use it to close off enemies when they're running away, and it just completely cuts up the fight in trios and duos. All right, so we're going to go into the combined spells now. So the first and foremost is going to be Electric Dash. That's going to take Lightning Bolt and Vortex. When you combine it together, you get a little reticle on the ground you can teleport to. When you dash through somebody, that will do quite a bit of damage. They actually had to nerf this when this first came out because of the one-shot combo, where you levitate somebody and you use Electric Sphere and then you teleport onto them and just mag dump basically all of your other spells. This is very good for getting up to out of reach areas and then casting spells down. I like to use it when I know that people are going to be pushing in on me, like a Barbarian or perhaps a Tree of Life Warlock. You kind of do a little fake out because they just hear the electric casting, kind of do a pump fake like you're going to use Lightning Storm directly on the ground and then just teleport behind them. So the next one is going to be Elemental Bolt. This is going to be the bread and butter of most sorcerers. This is just a basic projectile, kind of like Shadow Bolt. It's very easy, very quick to understand, and it helps a lot because it's a projectile that does the headshot, damage increase, the leg shot, damage decrease. Not only is it a very strong ability, it's on a low cooldown. It used to be much stronger when Apex of Sorcery was very strong. You could basically pump fake with it, but now it's, in my opinion, for the build that I think is the strongest, it's pretty okay. I use it mostly for mob clear. I usually use Fire Arrow in of itself as opposed to forcing the elemental combo because Water Bolt is very good self peel and Fire Arrow is insane. Just damage all around. It's great. So the next one's gonna be Flame Frost Spear. This one's super simple. You put Ice Spear with Flame Strike and you get Flame Frost Spear. This one's tricky because when you shoot it out, it has that delay still. You need to make sure that you kind of communicate with your team that what you're doing, because you could very easily hit a teammate and just absolutely nuke them. It is a lot of damage, I will say. The best thing it's used for is when you know a team is full sending through a door, like you hear that cleric buffing up, you hear that warlock popping that, or a barbarian popping the rage. Throw a Flame Frost Spear at the door, they will get separated. They will either get separated or they will take a huge hit. It's fantastic. That's probably the best thing you can use it for, or just clearing like a train of mobs. Let's see, your Flamethrower. This one has kind of been the black sheep of the combined spells because the amount of damage that you can do with it, how do I put this? It is so little damage for the amount of time that you spend vulnerable casting, and especially even if you were like trying to clear a rogue, you're going to get run down before you can get off any true damage. The only thing that I can personally think of is if you get up on, say, a ranger's face and you want to blind them with Flamethrower and just melt them down. I don't even have a clip of me getting a kill with this because it's just honestly, it's so bad for a merged spell. If you didn't even run Time Distortion, that would be even crazier to try to go for this one. Next one's gonna be Icebound. This is gonna be Stone Skin and Glaciate put together. Upon casting, become frozen for 6 seconds. Becoming immune to all damage, the ice can be shattered by a powerful impact. This is super good for solo bossing. It's used to negate a lot of the damage that the bosses like almost guaranteed do. So if you have a hard time, say with Spectral Knight when he does the die and he does the big swing, you can just Icebind. For Lich, when he puts the purple orb on you, that's the 95% one unless you have, you know, another person tank the circle, you can literally just cleanse the circles. So next up is gonna be Lightning Storm. This was the strongest thing in the game for like, I think it was like a week, right? This is why, you know, you don't see #1 Sorc kills, because nobody would care about it. When this character first released, Lightning Storm was so strong. I think I have a clip here. You literally could just find fully geared people, and as long as you just insta-casted it with Apex of Sorcery, you would, with almost 170% magic power bonus full true, you would wipe anybody. I don't think it belongs in solos, because most of the time now people can survive it unless you have a Giga kit on, but then you're risking it to a winless ranger. So it's very niche. It's very good for kind of like delaying a buff ball entrance, so that way you can really hinder their backline. Let's say you TP up into a flank position and you see them charging your teammates, you can throw down a Lightning Storm and hit all three. It's pretty solid, but on a almost full minute cooldown, it doesn't feel very worth it, in my opinion. Lightning Vortex, I used this maybe once, right? I couldn't even remember what the combo was. The idea behind it is that you knock enemies back with Electrify, right? So the target loses 20% move speed bonus and you knock them back. The only targets you're really going to be knocking back are, well, rogues and fighters, maybe clerics, but the downside to them getting close onto you and you're burning another cooldown, you're burning 2 cooldowns, and you have to get a combo spell off. The amount of time it takes to get them both casted, combo them, and then release it, and then wait a second, and then it pushes them back. At that point, you could have been Cutthroat. You could have been hit with Faithfulness. You could be Achilles. They could be activating Sprint as soon as they get hit. They have all of the threats that are going to be closing the gap on you have instant ways to get over that, and they have instant ways to cancel it. So the fact that it only slows them, it electrifies them for 2 seconds, it's not really a big game changer, especially with like the breakthrough buffs or Iron Will or Cutthroat just immediately canceling it anyway. I would definitely put this in like the D tier. It definitely needs kind of like an improvement, especially when the other option is using Vortex to TP and then Lightning Storming. You would, if you use that, you would cut off your mobility and a giant damaging AoE. Not worth it. Next one up is Mud Shield. This is going to be Water Bolt and Stone Skin put together. Now, the only times I've really seen this work in trios, I saw a Solitude's team running this where they would have the Sorc throw out the Mud Shield, and then they would be able to buff ball forward with Bard and Cleric with Accelerando and, you know, Bless and all that stuff. I haven't seen it work too well, but maybe one of you guys can link me a clip of you just absolutely dominating somebody with Mud Shield. Whenever I go against somebody, I'm either already being very oppressive to the point that I can close the gap, because the idea is that you just blocking all damage for 8 seconds in front of you, it remains fixed. So if you start turning and looking around, it'll still be looking that way. So if the enemy just slightly moves to the side, they can very easily then hit you. And you can't just cast your abilities through it. It has to be specific things. So one of the big ones was like Mud Shield into Lightning Storm, because you aim at the ground and it comes from above. Other than that, I personally haven't seen much use out of it. I'm excited to see what the community comes up with. Next one is Summon Lava Elemental. I really liked this one for the Lich. So summon a Lava Elemental for 24 seconds. The Lava Elemental deals 10 fire magical damage per second to nearby enemies, plus the rock that it throws. Now, this did have a bug where if it died, it would leave that spot still on fire, and it would just powerhouse the Lich. I used it for the Lich. It was hilarious. And then you would just shield the circles and be just fine. It's not really worth the double cooldown of the Golem and the Fire Orb to me, because you'll find that I love the spell merge idea, but for a lot of these cooldowns, if you remember and you pay attention, a 90-second cooldown to maybe have a little goal, because it's still gonna die on like 2 hits, right? It's never going to do giga damage unless it's on a stationary target. One of the things that's really good is if you think a ranger is shoulder peeking, you could put the lava golem behind them and then engage, right? Again, the earth elemental, when you throw it out though, you get 30 physical, armor rating. It's fantastic. So then if you just throw the elemental behind them and Stone Skin at the same time, you increase your armor drastically. to just close the gap, and you're closing off their escape route. I don't know, man. I feel like the lava elemental is a fun thing to do. Like, a lot of what Sorc is just super duper fun, but like for the min-maxers out there, you're not going to be like, oh yes, everything has its exact niche, perfect purpose in every fight. No, some of them are just gonna be like, it just wouldn't have mattered. So that's fun for bossing and stuff, but you know, Ghost King kills it after a couple, like one scream, and then just hits it for a little bit. Thorn of Earth. Now this one was tricky. This one recently had to get fixed. One of the things that they found people were doing, there was a bug that if you got hit by Thorn of Earth and you were thrown up in the air or something like that, but you didn't get moved, like let's say you were in a red portal and somebody threw it up but like kind of sandwiched you, you couldn't get hurt the rest of the match. It was insane. So hot fix later, if I'm trying to use Eruption, Thorn of Earth, if I'm just trying to block somebody's way, the golem is going to do that instantly. It's a little upgrade of damage from Erupt, and it blocks their way. I've only seen it used truly once, right? So I would it doesn't last long enough. It doesn't last long enough to truly be a spell that I'm like, yes, you should master this. If you can use it, cool. You know, maybe a little toph in you, you know? But, you know, as the Boulder says, he's not afraid, so I'm not really afraid of Thorn of Earth either. Wall of Fire, this is one of the bread and butter combos. Flame Strike and Eruption. I like to throw this out on bosses and on enemy teams as much as I can, because it not only cuts up the enemy, it also makes it so that way they have a harder time seeing us, their rangers have a harder time, their clerics have a harder time getting heals. It's fantastic. This melts bosses, hits around corners, melts people. The only problem is it's really easy to avoid. It has that 20 damage instantly, but you're gonna be giving up quite a bit of your like controlling the area. It's a lot of fun, and I do think it's underutilized. I definitely can't wait to see what you guys come up with. So that is all of the combo spells and all of the regular spells. So my best combo set that I have come up with is right here. My favorite combo. First off, you're going to need like 25 memcap for this, which is a little tougher with what I build. I end up usually having to socket something or using a spell book or some kind of spell casting implement to hit that level, because you're going to use elemental, which is 7 memory cap. Okay, it's going to require a book because you're going to primarily focus on controlling the fight with Flame Arrow and Wind Blast. When we get into these fights, you start with Fire Arrow, and then when you close the gap, use Wind Blast. So that way you throw out the flame arrows, they're circling the opponent, and you wind blast them. Then if they engage on you, say they're like, fuck this, and they go in, you throw out a water bolt at them, controlling where they move. Or if you go through a doorway, just throw it on the floor on it, forces them to jump it. If you need to get away, you have Vortex and Lightning Bolt. If a rogue gets on you, you can cast Vortex as you go through a doorway, right? You can cast Vortex if you think there's gonna be somebody next to you. Gives you that second, and then it pushes them away. Lightning Bolt, you can use it as a rogue check, you can use it as a TP, and if you pull out your spell book and then cast it, you can then do just an insane amount of damage. It's fantastic. You have Eruption, Wind Blast, Water Bolt, and Vortex on the left hand, because when you're using Lightning Bolt, then you're able to hit an easier Eruption. If somebody's pushing you, you can cast Vortex, you can use Wind Blast to knock somebody back. So if a rogue is just running at me and I'm like zapping him, he's like, okay, you knock him back. If he's still running at you, hit him with a water bolt so he's even slower, and then just use Vortex. It is an insane combination to use Lightning Bolt into the other spells, and so many people just focus on magic staff, damage. It's like, no, dude, you're not thinking enough. You're not thinking enough, brother. Flame Strike and Eruption on two different wheels, so that way you can combo it. Same with Water Bolt and Fire Arrow, Vortex and Lightning Bolt. The only thing that I would say you can swap up are these two, like just for placement. Hell, if you wanted to, you could even have it set to combo on the bottom right, combo on the top right, and combo on the top left. The beauty of this is that you control the fight with these fast cooldowns. So now we're gonna go into my favorite build. All right, so here we are at the build phase. My favorite build is Giga Resourcefulness, because remember, what we talked about is we're trying to get the cooldown reduction bonus, the CDR. You don't say the B, it's just cooldown reduction. You're trying to get that as high as possible. It starts at -6, which means your cooldowns are going to be a little higher than usual. So when you put on gear, I prefer Rings of Survival, right? A ceremonial headdress, because it starts with 7 resourcefulness. Blood woven robes, because you get will and resourcefulness. You lose a little bit of move speed. That's okay, because you're going to be controlling the fight. Buttoned leggings, because again, only 1 negative move speed. You get 7 fucking resourcefulness. It's fantastic. And they're really cheap because not a lot of classes want resourcefulness, right? I prefer blood woven gloves, but as you can see, this is a very giga kit. So arcane is very good for agility, for that movement speed we lost, and will for the magic power bonus. Right now, I'm going to showcase just the blood woven gloves because it's damage and it's even more cooldown reduction because it's resourcefulness. So then I love having a watchman cloak, you guessed it, for resourcefulness with magic power, true magic, max health, yada yada yada. I finish off if I'm at the near 50 resourcefulness. I usually get Lightfoots with 2 resource and add move speed because we go from obviously 291, 309. It's insane. So if you're at like 309, 310, you can use your book and the lightning bolt to slow down the enemy by 20%, and you're able to stay at 300 move speed when you start casting because you got the book out, just like wizard, just like caster warlock, all that stuff. So I use spellbook. We'll just throw on the unique crystal sword just for glam's sake. And I usually, if you're at 50 resourcefulness already, just go with a Phoenix Choker. You're gonna need as much true damage as possible because the build is all about tagging people with the small abilities. Remember, you're gonna be tagging them with fire arrow. Each instance of true damage goes onto each arrow. So when you're firing 3 homing arrows, like in this kit, this very strong kit, 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 instances of true damage are going onto each arrow. That's 24 true damage and the actual damage of the ability. That's insane. So if somebody gets up in your face and you just left click water bolt and fire arrow, you are going to shotgun them for a ridiculous amount of damage. So this is kind of a top of the line kit. Obviously you can go with whatever sash color you want. Chads go white sash, obviously, to be seen more. We're not trying to hide in the darkness like a rogue pansy. Come on. This is the drip. This is the final drip. I love how my character looks. I think it works with the horns because the ceremonial headdress looks so dumb. It looks terrible without the horns. The whole kit is based around having that insane cooldown reduction. So we get all the way to 40% when we're throwing out these abilities. Now, Flame Strike with a 50% cooldown reduction is 12 seconds. So it's around 14 seconds. You have a 14-second cooldown. This allows for, if you're a newer player, you're going to be able to spam the hell out of this kit, right? You are going to be able to spam every ability that you want. Now, the Vortex and Lightning Bolt, these are going to come down to roughly like 22, okay? So it's still decisive in the fight. The Fire Arrow and the Water Bolt going to be about 6 seconds. I think it's like 7.5 or something like that. If you just literally have out a spellbook and you throw out Fire Arrow, you swap Wind Blast, you swap Water Bolt, swap Flame Strike, Fire Arrow, Wind Blast, Water Bolt, Eruption, Fire Arrow, Wind Blast, Water Bolt. You just control the fight. Like, there's nothing the enemy can do unless they are actively shooting you with arrows, like if they're Iron Will Barbarian, if they're another Sorc TPing onto you, maybe a Wizard Fireball on your feet. You are so much damage, and it's so fun because you're actually allowed to you're allowed to use your spells on mobs. Wizard, where it's like, I can use many magic missiles as I want, but I still gotta sit down. No, this class allows you to cover for your teammates when they need to like hydrain back up to full HP, sit for sanctuaries, sit for second wind or blood exchange or blah 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 blah. It's the only class in the game that doesn't have to sit down. And as a wizard main with over 4,000 hours on wizard, I have probably sat longer in this game than most of you have played. Let that sink in. I have to sit longer than you have on the game. I could have mastered an entire new game in the amount of time I've had to sit and do nothing in this game. And that is the shittiest game design I've ever seen in my life. But moving on. Not gonna get carried away. Then we look at the spell memory and see how we still barely only get to 22 because none of these are going to actively build us that knowledge, right? We have to put it on the pieces. So you can kind of see in the side here that like we also have a Radiant Cloak or two. I'll zoom in. So a couple of these pieces have padded leggings for extra HP, Radiant Cloaks for extra knowledge. Hell, even these button boots on the side here, which give us will and resourcefulness. Now, you can tinker around with the builds however you want, but this is my setup, and the stats over here on the left side shoot up. You get around 130 HP. But like, I always shoot for max HP rolls. You won't have to when you're practicing. Literally just buy like the cheapest versions of these, get near, say, 30% CDR just to get kind of a feel for it. It's still insanely good, but the hardest problem is going to be identifying when you should be using a book versus double casting. The biggest thing that I can say is that when you feel like you might get jumped, that's when you double cast. It's not for giga damage, or maybe you're kind of nervous on what the enemy team can do. Start with no book out. If you land a couple of hits, swap to your book, walk them down with the leash. Walk them down with the leash. It's so fun. If you feel like you need to burst the rogue as he's running you down, hit him with the combo. Let's go ahead and just talk about the stats that I usually hit. I usually try to aim for 120 HP, just so that way I can maybe survive a windless in this meta, or maybe survive a rogue, but at the end of the day, you're just another caster. Memory capacity, I have to get at least 22, and then I guess we can talk about that in a second. 310 movement speed again. Spellcasting speed doesn't matter because of instant cast. Action speed, I try to get over 7 at least. So that way when I release the spell, it's at a guaranteed time. If you ever feel like sometimes your spells cast really slow, even though you have high knowledge, it's because you have really low action speed. I have a YouTube short on that. Let's see here. Magic Pen doesn't really matter because they're all small spells. So if you're hitting a big spell, which would be like Fireball or Fire Orb, that would be cool, but you know, they haven't really balanced that yet. Your CDR goes up. Remember, with Stone Skin, if you wanted to, on your setup, you could throw out Golem and Stone Skin. You could like flat probably 45, 50 instantly. Magic resistance, that's gonna be pretty high just by all of the will that we put on our pieces as well, right? The all attributes also helps with that. 60% magic power bonus. Now this is a strong kit, and in a regular kit, if you get to 50, but you have all of this true, like you have a purple choker and everything else is running true, that's just fine. So like, for example, of like a little bit of a weaker kit, let's go ahead and put that on just so you can see a good example. So let's see here. Bought a lot of really nice kits. Here we go. This one's not the best. Put that on. Like, if you just shoot for adding a little bit of strength, so that way it also adds HP, because we start with low strength, right? We're only at 16. We want to get above 15 if you can for the physical damage bonus. But even if I'm only at 50%, my spell book, if it has magical damage bonus, will help us out. Shoot for magic damage bonus and magic power. Obviously max health if you can. But do you see how most of the stats are kind of in this similar vein? This is the setup. This is what you want to be shooting for. This is the ultimate way to play Sorc. And I'm hoping that this guide is going to be the best way for you to play it. I might do a specific set of videos where it's like high HP Sorc versus melee Sorc, you know, casting Sorc, stuff like that. But there's an infinite amount of ways that you can play this. So a couple of quick things before we end this video. You cannot cast. So I have Xerxes Eye, right? The crystal ball. If I have the Xerxes Eye out, I can only cast with the right hand of my spells. So if you did want to run Golem, if you wanted max damage, you would want to keep damage spells on the right, but you wouldn't be able to lock somebody out unless you put away the Xerxes Eye. Spellbook can do all of these, right? Then, what's it called? For Crystal Sword, if you want to be able to melee with it, you need to have a suppressed sorcery. So if you're planning on doing 10 spell, say the Glaciate and Stone Skin method, so that way you can be a bruiser as well. If you run Crystal Sword with 10 spell, you would not be able to melee. You would need to run a longsword, because the longsword does not have the ability to cast, so it will default to the actual melee of blocking and attacking. Make sense? Even if I had a falchion, right? In the falchion and Xerxes Eye, you can't use the left spell because then it would just be your falchion swipe. It's a bug, and I hope they fix that, because boy howdy do I want to use one of these bad boys. And I'll have my Xerxes video up hopefully the day after this, just for shits and gigs, because we did use it and it was a lot of fun. So Spellbook is going to be one of the better casting implements. Magic Staff is also a very good one. So I just have a Spell Plunder. It doesn't work with Sorc, but your staff is the same thing with the 10 spell. if you have suppress sorcery on, you would be able to hit and block with the staff, right? But if you put on spells, when you go to attack with the staff, it'll try to do the left spell. If you try to block with it, it would do the right spell. Now, all of the scaling with these items, if you do cast your abilities with, say, the Spell Plunder Rod, or, you know, a spell book or a crystal sword, you will get that magical damage added to those abilities. And if you want max damage, we're going to have another video releasing today that is talking about how to get the most magical damage and how to get the most physical power bonus. All right, one of the other things for the miscellaneous section of this video is that a lot of people were asking me about Squire Gear and how they can replicate this build for Squire. This is day 2 of editing, so I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. You will not be able to replicate a 50 resource build with Squire and be able to kill somebody. That's just not how it's going to work. Like, you could do old shoes and all of the giga resourcefulness stuff, but you would be at like 20% magic power bonus with no true if you're in Squire. Practice landing your spells. Don't worry about getting the kill. Just go into the lobby, think to yourself, I'm going to pick a fight. I'm going to try to land a full rotation of spells. Once you get comfortable with the muscle memorization, because it's different than all the other casters with left and right hand casting, especially 10 spell, having to make sure you swap off onto suppress sorcery for stabbing with the crystal sword, I recommend just practicing with longsword. It just makes it easier for the 10 spell. And then if you go to your spells, you can actually see what you can start with. You can't get that much memory. You just can't. So if you just start with the basics of like wind blast, water bolt, vortex, eruption, flame strike, fire arrow, and lightning bolt, you can kind of fill in the rest that you want. I definitely would say get some practice with the golem. So like, you know, go into 125s and just put on some like random knowledge stuff. Like, for example, let me just do that real quick just to show you what it's like, right? Like just a random owl pendant, a ring of wisdom, and yeah, I guess we got another ring of wisdom in here. Then you can actually get to the summon earth elemental. Don't worry about true damage. If you're in Squire or like just normies and below, you're going to run into the min-maxers anyway. You should 100% just be worried about landing the spells, figuring out what perks you want to run. Do you want to do Apex of Sorcery? Do you want to do Manifold? Do you want to have Spell Merge and Spell Sculpting, like for the distance? Those are the important things for Squire, okay? Right. So, I hope you guys really appreciate all of this. And I guess, you know, this is the first rough draft of it. Hopefully, we'll be adding more and more and more and more to the Sorc Ultimate Guide videos. Comment down below what you want to see a guide on, because I wanted to get over the fear of posting and just get this out with some like video examples, so that way when you're starting a Sorc, you have a great place to start. Okay, thank you guys all so much for watching, and I stream Monday through Friday on Twitch from like noon to like 8 p.m. 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. You know, come see me, clock in, and if you guys have any questions, I'm all ears. We'll see you then.